The famous trial of Socrates, in which he was tried, condemned to death, and executed in year 399 BC, was recorded in Plato's Apology. As Plato himself was present at the trial, Plato's book Apology is supposed to be the speech that Socrates made in his own defense at the trial. The prosecution of Socrates was based upon the charge that Socrates is an evildoer and a curious person, searching into things under the earth and above the heaven, and making the worse appear the better cause, and teaching all this to others. But the real ground of hostility to him was that he was supposed to be connected with the aristocratic party. Most of his pupils belonged to this faction, and some in position of power had proved themselves very dangerous. The prosecutors were Anytus, a democratic politician, Meletus, a tragic poet, and Lycon. They maintained that Socrates was guilty of not worshipping the gods of the state but introducing other new divinities, and further that he was guilty of corrupting the young by teaching them accordingly. At his own defense, Socrates begins his speech by saying, "As for all the people who are present here today, they must not be angry with me if I speak in my accustomed manner. I am not a political speaker. I am over 70 and am never appeared in a court of law until now. They must therefore pardon my unforensic way of speaking. In addition to my formal accusers, I have a large body of informal accusers as well, who ever since the judges were children have gone about telling of one Socrates, a wise man who speculated about the heavens above and searched into the earth beneath and made the worse appear the better cause. Such men as Socrates, they say, are supposed not to believe in the existence of the God. This old accusation by public opinion is more dangerous than the formal indictment in this court." In reply to this older ground of hostility, all I wanted to say is that I am not a man of science. I have nothing to do with physical speculation. I am not a teacher and does not take money for teaching. I goes on to make fun of sophists and to disclaim the knowledge that they profess to have. What then is the reason why I am called wise and have such an evil fame? The oracle of Delphi was once asked if there were any man wiser than me, and replied that there was not. I have been completely puzzled, since I knew nothing, and yet a god cannot lie. I therefore went about among men reputed wise, to see whether I could convict the god of error. First I went to a politician who was thought wise by many. I soon find out that the man was not wise, and explained this to him, kindly but firmly, and the consequence was that he hated me. I then went to the poets and asked them to explain the passage in their writings, but they were unable to do so. Then I knew that not by wisdom do poets write poetry, but by a sort of genius and inspiration. Then I went to artisans, but found them equally disappointing. In this process, I made many dangerous enemies. Finally, I concluded that God only is wise, and by his answer that there is no wiser man than me, God is only using my name by way of illustration, as if God said, "He, O man, is the wisest who, like Socrates, knows that his wisdom is in truth worth nothing." This business of exposing of pretender take up all my time and left me in utter poverty. But I feel it a duty to vindicate the oracle of Delphi. Young men of the richer classes, having not much to do, enjoy listening to me exposing other people and proceed to do likewise, thus increasing the number of my enemies, for they do not like to confess that their pretense of knowledge has been detected. That's all I wanted to say to my informal accusers. Socrates now proceeds to examine his prosecutor Meletus and ask him, who are the people who improve the young? Meletus first mentions the judges, then under pressure is driven step by step to say that every Athenian except Socrates improve the young. Next, Socrates points out that good men are better to live among than the bad men, and therefore I cannot be so foolish as to corrupt my fellow citizen. But if unintentionally, then Meletus should instruct me, not prosecute me. The indictment had said that Socrates not only denied the gods of the state but introduced other gods of his own. In reply to this, Socrates said, I have been a soldier and has remained at my post as I was ordered to do so. Now God orders me to fulfill the philosopher mission of searching into myself and other men, and it would be as shameful to desert my post now as in the time of battle. Fear of death is not wisdom, since no one knows whether death may not be the greater good. If I were offered my life on the condition of ceasing to speculate, I would rather reply, Man of Athens, I honor and love you, but I shall obey God rather than you. And while I have life and strength in me, I shall never cease from the practice and teaching of philosophy. For know that this is the command of God, and I believe that no greater good has ever happened in this state than my service to the God. I have something more to say, at which you may be inclined to cry out, but I believe that to hear me will be good for you, and therefore I beg that you will not cry out. I would have you known that if you kill such a man as I am, you will injure yourself more than you will injure me. Nothing will injure me, not Meletus and nor Anytus. They cannot, for a bad man is not permitted to injure a better than himself. It is for the sake of my judges, I say, not for my own sake, that I am pleading. I am a gadfly given to the state by God, and it will not be easy to find another like me. Among those present here are many formal pupils of mine. Not one of these has been produced by the prosecutor to testify that I corrupt the young. I refuse to follow the custom of producing my weeping children in court to soften the hearts of the judges. It is my business to convince the judges, not to ask a favor of them. After listening to both prosecution and defense, Socrates was found guilty by a majority, and it was then open to Socrates by Athenian law to propose some lesser penalty than death. Socrates proposed a fine of 30 minae. This was so small a punishment that the court was annoyed and condemned him to death by a larger majority than that which had found him guilty. Undoubtedly, he foresaw this result. It is clear that he had no wish to avoid the death penalty by concession which might seem to acknowledge his guilt.
It is decided that Socrates will be executed by poison of hemlock. In his final hour, Socrates said,
And now, O man, who have condemned me, I would fain prophesy to you, for I am about to die, and in the hour of death, men are gifted with prophetic power, and I prophesy to you who are my murderers, that immediately after my departure, punishment far heavier than you have inflicted on me will surely awaits you. If you think by killing man you can prevent someone from censoring your evil life, you are mistaken. That is not a way of escape which is either possible or honorable. The easiest and noblest way is not to be disabling others, but to be improving ourselves. And those of us who think death is an evil are in error, for either death is a dreamless sleep, which is plainly good, or the soul migrates to another world? And what would not a man give if he might converse with Orpheus and Mosaius and Hesiod and Homer? If this be true, let me die again and again. In the next world, I will converse with others who have suffered death unjustly, and above all, I will continue my search after knowledge. In another world, they do not put a man to death for asking question. Assuredly not, for beside being happier than we are, they will be immortal if what is said is true. The hour of departure has arrived, and we go our ways. I to die and you to live. Which is better? God only knows.